Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's FPC NFL Sunday on a Saturday. You know why? Because it's NFL Divisional Round weekend. We have 4 games this weekend, 2 today, 2 tomorrow. And fellas, I'm excited to be here. Woke up bright and early. Well, I mean, it's quarter to noon here on the East Coast, so I don't know how early that really is, but it's early on a Saturday. We don't normally do this, but I'm excited because, well, hey, I think we got a pair of really good games on our plate today. So, good morning, fellas. How we doing today?
Doing pretty good. I think this is probably the best divisional round matchup weekend that I can remember in a long time. Just a lot of young quarterbacks, and of course some matchups that I think are going to come down to the wire across the board.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, you talk about the lack of parity in the NFL, or the amount of parity, considering the people talking about expanded playoffs need to go away. Well, 7 of these 8 teams have been in this round either this year, last year, or the year before. So maybe it's just 8 teams establishing stability, but I won't go any longer because unlike Dak Prescott, I know how much time is left, so I can actually hand the ball to the host properly.
I appreciate that that high awareness. Certainly something Dak did not have. I just actually realized, you might have already realized it, the three of you and the folks out there watching on Full Press Radio, Twitch, and YouTube and all that, apparently have a cat over my shoulder. So apparently there's 5 of us here on the show today. So you're just going to have to hang in there while she hangs out up there. So
do we get 5 picks for the audience instead of just 4 then?
Oh, she likes to talk, so I don't know. I mean, she's not a big Packers fan though, so
she's got to go for the Bengals though. Clearly,
yeah. Well, you know, hey, a tiger doesn't change its stripes, and in this case, the close relative of the tiger is this very fat cat behind me. So, yeah. So, anyways, obviously, to Braden's point, last weekend was, we got the extra games, but was it really entertaining? We had a couple duds over the course of the weekend, which kind of made me get to halftime in a couple games. I'm just like, all right, I need this to be over. I need to go to bed. I don't think we're going to get that this weekend. I actually think and we're going to start talking about the Bengals and the Titans here, even that being probably the least desirable matchup of the weekend. And I say that just because, well, there's got to be one that's probably the least desirable, and it would be this one. And even so, it's shaping up to be a pretty great matchup because, the big storyline of the weekend is obviously the return of Derrick Henry, who spent a majority of the season on the IR, and likely at the time of his injury.
Sorry,
I don't think
many. Could you say that again? I'm having trouble hearing.
Apparently, we have 6 people because Siri is joining in on the fun here, folks.
Can you not say the word injury? Does that sound too much like Siri? We got to avoid that word, apparently.
I don't know. Apparently, it's just listening in and it's fact checking me right now, which is kind of embarrassing because if I had a fact checker, oh boy, man, would I get called out right on the spot. But no, I obviously Derrick Henry, the injury that he suffered earlier this season, many assumed was going to be season ending. Momentum started to build late in the season for him to return, and good for the Titans because they ended up getting the 1 seed, which again, at the time, it looked pretty dire for this team who lost Derrick Henry, lost Julio Jones, and even Julio Jones isn't Julio Jones that we know, or at least we've come to know with the Falcons. He's kind of a bit player at this point, but they also lost AJ Brown. So for weeks, this team was just kind of going through the motions, and late in the season, all of a sudden, boom, there they are, the number 1 seed and hosting a playoff game. And good for them because, well, the season starts over now and they have Derrick Henry. I happen to think he's going to have a pretty big impact in this game, even despite not playing for a while. We'll start top to bottom. Kyle, you're on the top, so you're lucky first one to react in all this. I'll let you go. What do you think his impact is going to be in this game? And do you think the Titans are really going to lean on him against the Bengals?
I mean, I guess the question is health, right? It sounds like they've been testing him out with contact all week. So I'm kind of operating under the assumption that he is maybe not 100% healthy, but probably close to 90% healthy. So in that instance, against this Bengals run defense, I think he can have a monster game. And I think unlike, the Packers, I don't know about bringing Bakhtiari back last week. If he gave him or the week before the regular season finale, right? Like if you gave him just 2 more weeks, would that be 2 weeks better? But you don't want his first action being in the playoffs. I think for a running back, you're less worried about the rust as well. I think I talked about this with Aaron Jones on the Packers pod. I didn't mind him sitting out week 18 with the Lions. Derrick Henry, he's got the NFL vision. He knows how to find his lanes behind that offensive line. So him not playing for 8 weeks, I don't think you're going to see rust. So I agree with you, and I think this is going to be a big Derrick Henry game as kind of a way to establish that And then, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's not that healthy, and they split his work. But I'm kind of going with the assumption that he is healthy.
I mean, Diana Rossini from ESPN tweeted say there's no snap count limit with Henry, and that's a good thing. But I also think you have a running back with fresh legs in the playoffs, which is always dangerous to anybody. And don't discount Deontay Foreman in this game either. He was a guy that was making big runs when Henry was out. Maybe you can use him in a couple situations to continue to tire out that Bengals run defense. But I actually think this game comes down to more Tennessee's defense against Joe Burrow. And I think what you want to see is Mike Rabel dial up some cool plays defensively. I think people underrate him as a head coach. I think people underestimate this Titans team as a whole. They're probably the least hyped one seed of all time. And if you went by the college football style resume, they lost to the Jets and the Texans, but they got wins over the Bills. They got wins over the Chiefs. They've got wins over the Rams. So it's kind of a weird one seed in a way, and maybe still prove it for a guy like Ryan Tannehill to be the guy who's expected to do something. But it seems like when you have a couple of these matchups, these hype teams against these teams that don't really fit that hype, and I think people got to give Tennessee a little more love than what they've been actually getting over the last week.
Sorry to jump in, Braden, but does this remind anyone of the 2017 Eagles? And I think they were even less hyped because I believe that their divisional round game, they were actually the underdogs in their home playoff debut, which I think was the first time ever for a one seed. So, and look how that turned out. Sorry, Ian. But
get your pokes in while you can, because I'll take plenty of them later.
Yeah, I think in terms of Henry, kind of like Ricky said, I think what this game is going to come down to, I'm kind of interested how much they're actually going to be able to use him, because so hard to kind of get a lead on Tennessee, especially more than one score. But I think if there's kind of any team to do that, it's this one with the explosiveness and kind of just the pace they play and how much they're able to hit on plays down the field. So I'm kind of more interested in how much they're going to be able to kind of lean on him. In terms of rust, it's kind of interesting. I don't really think there'll be a lot of rust, but if you look at, how he started the season over the course of his career, other than this year, he's kind of been hit or miss in terms of how consistent he's been in terms of production. So 2021 was definitely more productive for him to start the year, but you look at 2020, pretty much I think half of his first 8 games were under 100 yards rushing. So I don't expect there to be a lot of rust. I just think how many touches he actually gets is going to be the thing to watch for me.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure too, a running back, you're not necessarily worried about timing like you would be a receiver who's missed several weeks and trying to get on the same page with the quarterback. Obviously, the contact and the situation between the quarterback and the running back, it's far more connected to the backfield for the most part. Obviously, there's, I'm sure you'll have some passing, attempts or whatever, but for the most part, it's a runner coming back and running. And like Kyle said, you're an NFL runner, and certainly one like Derrick Henry is not going to need one to get comfortable and everything. So I do think he ends up playing a pretty big factor, just because I think the biggest thing for the Titans right now is to make sure they keep the Bengals offense off the field, because we know that they are at any point able and capable of scoring a 70-yard touchdown. I mean, it doesn't matter how good this offense or this defense or this Titans team plays. All it takes is one or two bad possessions, and you're lost, and maybe you're looking back and thinking, how did we lose this game? So how do you combat that? You try to give Tennessee you try to give the Bengals as few possessions as humanly possible. And I think you do that by slowing the game down, playing a very Packers tempo style offense, very kind of deliberate, cerebral, just kind of, milk that clock, use every second of it, and just kind of combat that high. So, I mean, the Tennessee Titans are certainly capable of scoring points. This isn't a team trying to, just hold off a high-powered offense. They can score points themselves, but I think just in general, the best route for them to take would be to just slow it down. And obviously, Derrick Henry is going to be a big factor in that, and Deontay Foreman as well. That's I'm glad you guys brought him up, because again, that apparently the cat's getting down. There's only 4 of us now. You're going to want to see a variety out of this Titans team, because I like the Bengals, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like they might be a year too early. Like, I think this is a team, I think Joe Burrow is very likely going to be in MVP conversations moving forward, more so than what he is now in the latter half. I think it was a little bit too late for him to really jump into it this year. Next year, I think he's going to be right in the thick of it. I also think the Bengals are going to be a better team. Are they ready to surprise a team this year like the Titans? And it's kind of a rhetorical question, but not really. So I guess I'll throw it to Kyle and say, am I wrong? Or do you guys think that this Bengals team is maybe a year early? And thus, obviously this is a Titans advantage.
Well, I'll rhetorically answer. No, I don't even know how to do that. But I don't think the players are. I think the players are ready. Like, I mean, Joe Burrow, we've seen him and I mean, I'm not the biggest like college translating to the NFL, but like the success that he had that one particular year in college, like he's played in the big games. I think they finally won a playoff game, right? Like if it was going to be that the players weren't ready, I think we might have saw it last week against the Raiders. Where I'm concerned, I don't think the coach is ready, because I don't know how you all feel, but I'll ask a question off of Ian's question. And I mean, I think the answer to this is yes, but is Zach Taylor the coach left in the playoffs you have the least amount of faith in?
Probably.
Brandon Staley's home, right? Jim Harbaugh? Or
Yeah,
John
exactly.
Harbaugh?
He's not in the playoffs.
Okay, he's not in here. Yeah. I mean, and it's not necessarily a indictment on him. It's just I don't like, if Brandon Staley was here, it would, in my opinion, it would be an indictment on him if I said
there are a lot of good coaches left. I think that's kind of the point.
Yes.
Though I think every coach that's left has been to an AFC championship game or or AFC or NFC championship game at least, and some of them have been to and even won Super Bowls, right? And he's got one playoff win under his belt. I think the play calling, and I mean, to be fair, the game scenario might force them into good play calling situations where they're throwing it a bunch. Because I think regardless of how this game goes, I think Joe Burrow needs to throw it about 40, 45 times to win.
Oh yeah,
I think especially against the Raiders, and I was surprised they only threw it 34. But you saw in the second half, especially, the play calling got incredibly conservative. They were running on first and second down on almost every play, every drive, every sequence, and you were just setting up Burrow to have to, in the second half, make these third and long throws every time. And that O-line, much better running than it is, again, pass protecting. I get that, but you also can't set yourself up to be in third and long situations every time, because Burrow's great and the connection with Chase is real and Higgins is awesome. Boyd, like, they've got talent there, but if you can let those Titans pass rushers tee up every time and it's 3rd and 7 every time you're going down 3rd down, I think that's not the winning recipe for the Bengals. I think they got to be throwing on 1st down. I think that's where you have to be aggressive and run more 2nd down, 3rd and short situations. But I think, and that's how they played against the Raiders to start the game. The very first play of the game was a throw. Like, the Bengals started with the ball and it was working, and you saw how much better they were in the first half. So I think they have to get into that. If the Titans get a big lead with Henry, they may have no choice. So in that sense, like, it's strength against strength, right? It's almost, the Bengals are almost a better team when they're behind, which maybe they might be the only team in the NFL you could say that. Certainly the only team left in the playoffs. But yeah, I feel like if they do get a lead, they might get too conservative and let the Titans get back in. So they're almost best success is to let the Titans get a big lead and hope Burrow throws your way out of it. But that's, I guess, where I'm struggling with them kind of winning this game.
Well, the passing game is clearly the strength of the Bengals team, and they have a lot of good qualities. But their best player and their best. I mean, again, this is I always think the quarterback is the most important, whether they're good or bad. I mean, if they're a bad quarterback, well, you're going to have a huge impact on your team, just negatively. I think in this case, you have to go with your strength. Why take the ball out of Joe Burrow's hand when he gives you the best chance to win? Now, on the flip side, and we'll talk about the Rams tomorrow, obviously. We saw last week, Matt Stafford's best game in the last, 3 months was this past weekend, where he threw 17 times. Guess what? Sometimes you take the ball out of your quarterback's hand to give yourself a better opportunity. In this case, I don't think you do that. I think, to your point, I think Joe Burrow has to throw a lot to win. So 17 times for Matt Stafford. That's
a pick six helped, to be fair, and like how much they were like dominating early, right? Like the game script really went in favor of that. But
I don't want to stray too far from the path here in our timeline. But let's just put it this way: the 4 previous games that Matt Stafford had played, he had thrown 8 interceptions. So I would
with like 8 touchdowns, right?
Yeah,
like he was like dead even. Like that really shouldn't be happening, especially how much they invested.
I would put my money on the fact that if he had to throw more than 17 times in that game, there's a good chance he likely would have turned it over. But we'll get to that tomorrow. We'll have plenty of time to talk about Matt Stafford tomorrow. In this game, though, I do believe Joe Burrow has to throw. I mean, you don't take the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands. You push the ball. And like I said, I mean, maybe they're just not quite there yet. Maybe they overachieved a little bit, and that's fine. I mean, those are the type of things you want to see for young teams like this. I mean, go back to Seattle. That year they made the playoffs at 7-9. I mean, no one was giving them a shot, but all of a sudden they made some noise, grew some confidence. Next thing you know, they go to back-to-back Super Bowls. So it'll be interesting to see how this ultimately plays out with Henry, with Chase, with Burrow. I do think we're going to get a pretty close game, and hopefully, very entertaining one. So let's jump right into it here. So we're going to do our pickup props, and we're just going to go right down the line like we normally do. But at the end of this pickup prop list, we're going to give our pick. So guys, prepare, put your name on it, and we're going to do it after. So we're going to jump right back into it. Jamar Chase, we were just talking about. AJ Brown, the best receiver on both teams. More receiving yards. Pretty simple. Who you're taking, Jamar Chase or AJ Brown?
I don't know if I'm getting too cute with this. If you asked receptions, I think I'd say Chase just for the sheer volume, but AJ Brown has this incredible yards after catch and yards per reception ability that's like almost unparalleled in the NFL. So because we're talking yards, I'm going to go with AJ Brown.
One underrated part of this matchup is the safety battle. You got Jesse Bates on one side for Cincinnati. You got Kevin Byard on one side for Tennessee. And you've got to think both of them are going to be helping their corners with double teaming the other wide receiver here. I'm going to go Jamar Chase because I think there's more likely Burrow's going to hit one big play, and AJ Brown could be used more if you want to mix it up in some screens, could use it some slant routes, could use it some different things, where I think Chase is more likely to get that downfield throw. I'll say Chase, but I think the other one has the more impactful game, and I'll get to that later.
Yeah, I'm going to go Jamar Chase as well, just because I think volume alone. And I do think the Bengals have the play style match up with AJ Brown's physicality a lot more than people expect. Guys like Mike Hilton and Von Bell. So I think that's going to be an underrated part going up against AJ Brown. So I'll go with Jamar Chase.
All right. Next, over under Joe Burrow. We're talking about how big of a game he needs to have for this Bengals team to win. That likely means throwing a few touchdowns. So are you giving him over under 2.5 total touchdowns, not just passing touchdowns? So you can rush it in here. So
this one's I think 2.5 is a perfect number. I guess based on the score I'm going to have later, I'm going to have to say under.
Yeah, I go with the under. Although to be fair, the last game the Titans did play, Davis Mills did throw for 3 touchdowns. So there is a possibility that Burrow could do what Davis Mills did, albeit different type of game. But I'm like what Kyle was talking about earlier. I do think Joe Mixon still has to be somewhat involved. He's kind of disappointing what he did against Vegas last week after he ran for over 100 against him in the regular season. So if Mixon gets more involved, you got to think he finds the end zone at least once, and that would make Burrow get only about 2 touchdowns. So I'll take the under. Good
logic. That's exactly what I'm thinking, Keeler.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mixon's going to be more involved in this game. We talked about kind of keeping the Bengals offense off the field earlier. I think Bengals might try to do the same to kind of the Titans offense in a way as well, give Mixon a little bit more chances closer to the goal line and in the red zone. So I'm going to go under on this one.
All right. There we go. Now, see, this is where we're going to get into some of the receiving. Oh, wait. Did I already do that one? Yes, I did. Sorry, folks. There we go. Rushing yards. This is where it gets a little bit juicy because to you guys' point, Joe Mixon, not a great game against the Raiders. Not that they really needed it. I mean, it is the Raiders and, again, one of those, just one of those teams that I don't think any one of us expected to go far. But in this game, you got two, arguably 2 of the best running backs in the league, certainly 2 of the top 5 running backs in the league when they're healthy. Joe Mixon obviously missed a lot of time last year with an injury. This year is Derrick Henry, but they're both healthy now. Presumably, who's going to have more rushing yards?
Well, just to back to that Raiders game, I think the strength of that Raiders defense really is the defensive line. And I know, Braden, they're a divisional rival of yours, so you probably know that. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the talent disparity between the Raiders secondary and the front definitely favors the front, where with the Titans, I'm not sure that talent disparity exists. So I think easier to run on the Titans than it is to run on the Raiders. And just the way, again, the strength of the Bengals being the quarterback, like you were saying, Ian, which is, again, why I was so disappointed that they went to such a conservative play calling in the second half, because I felt like it was working. Like they were passing with ease, and it seemed like kind of low risk passes that they could go to. But I think I'm also going to go back to something you said earlier, Ian, right? Like, with running backs, if anything, it's the timing, catching passes, right? And maybe that's where Henry might not catch any passes this game, but that also they don't really use him that much ever. I mean, he gets maybe 20 receptions a year when he's fully healthy. I think he might have got maybe 20 this year, only half a season, so maybe it was a bit better usage. But I think Henry and Mixon are going to have about the same amount of total yards, but Mixon I think will be much more used in the passing game. So because we're talking just rushing yards, I'm going to go with Derrick Henry.
I'm actually going to go the opposite. I'm going to go Joe Mixon as largely because I think even though there is no snap cut on Derrick Henry, I think you do get some Deontay Foreman. I think you do even get some Hilliard in this game. And Tennessee has more options of running the football. They can even use Tannehill running the football in some instances. The Bengals, it's really Joe Mixon's workload unless you really believe Samaje Perine's going to do much in this game. So just on sheer workload expectancy, I'll go with Mixon.
Yeah, I think this is going to be close. The thing that really stands out to me last week is Jamar Chase even getting some carries. So would not be surprised to see more guys than Mixon get carries. So I think it'll be kind of even on each side, but I'll slightly go Henry just because I think slightly better matchup for him than it will be for Mixon.
All right. There we go. Let's go. There we go. Derrick Henry. So this is what we've been kind of discussing for the most part. Is he healthy? How much action is he going to get? Is he going to end up splitting time with Foreman? Perhaps this number's a little high. Maybe it is for a return game. Maybe it isn't. So over under 22.5 carries in this game for Derrick Henry in his return.
All right, I'm going to try and stall for time here. I'm just going to look up his game log real quick, because how often did that happen? Basically, only 2 of the games he played this year, he didn't reach that.
Yeah.
Week 1 against the Cardinals, he only had 17 carries, and then against the Bills, strange enough, 20, and it was another game they won. Interesting. Just because it's happened most of the time this year. Again, I'm thinking he's back to 90%, so he might not get 35 carries like in week 2 against the Seahawks, but I think he'll go over 22.5.
Yeah, just off what I said earlier, I'll take the under in this one just because I think there's more options of variety to go with. You could actually go off, if you want to take it a step further, last year against the Bengals, a game they lost 31-20, hit 18 carries for 112 yards. So maybe you have that instance. I think he can get to 20, so slightly under.
I'm going to go over. I just think they're going to kind of make it a point to get him the ball as early as possible in this one. Kind of play with the game script a little bit and see what happens, kind of see where they're at maybe going into halftime. Determine where he's kind of at health-wise as well. So I think it's going to go over this one, and I think it'll be kind of close pretty early.
All right. And let's see. Who's going to score first? I think this is our last one for Bengals-Titans before we make our game pick. Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown. We've talked about all of them, but maybe it's someone else. So who scores first in this game?
I'm debating between the 2 wide receivers, honestly. Now, I did say Brown would get more yards, Chase more catches. So more catches means more chance of having that touchdown. So I think I'm going to go with Jamar Chase.
All right, let's have some fun with this one. I'm going to go other. Am I allowed 1 for each team, or I got to pick 1?
You can give me 1 for each team if you want.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Who's keeping score anyway? Who lines it anyway? The points don't matter.
Who's keeping the clock? That's why I'm asking the question.
Up to the points don't matter. That's right. HBO Max, by the way, if you want to watch every episode of every season of Whose Line Is It Anyway, the American run. But go ahead. Sorry, that we'll save that discussion for another day.
Cincinnati, I'm going to go with Tyler Boyd, a guy who seemed to have been catching touchdowns left and right, and if extra tension's on Chase and T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd is likely to get one that actually the whistle doesn't blow this time. And the second one for Tennessee, I'm going to go with the tight end, Anthony Ferkser. Good goal line candidate. He's had a touchdown in back-to-back games. Maybe he'll get 3 straight. And in the goal line, he's a good option for that.
That's interesting, Keeler, because he could run one in too. That may not even be a pass. Like the way they've used their tight ends is they could also run them in at the goal line. So that's actually a pretty sneaky play there.
I kind of want to go with others as well. I think there's one target that's kind of stood out to me the last probably month or so for Joe Burrow, and I think that's C.J. Uzomah, the tight end. He had a touchdown last week, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I think just kind of the way he's able to win in tight spaces and win in the red zone, that's going to be big for Cincinnati in this matchup, I think. So I'll go C.J. Uzomah and go other.
Braden fooled me. I thought he was going T. Higgins for sure.
Hey, it got interest. See, you don't even have to pick someone that's on the list there. So, all right, guys, It's time. It's time to make our picks for this game. We went through our prop bets. We went through some of the bigger storylines of this matchup. Kyle made a great reference to whose line is it anyway. Just like, I might have to start opening the show just like that. It's FPC NFL Sunday, the show where everything's made up and the points don't matter. The points don't matter, just like touchdown to interception ratio doesn't matter. Jesus, I tried not to go I tried to go the whole episode without mentioning that. But anyways, game picks. Who do you got? We got Bengals on the road heading to Tennessee. I'll let you guys start, and I'll give my pick at the end. Kyle, what do you think?
So I kind of hinted at it earlier, right? Like I wasn't going to go with 3 touchdown passes for Burrow because I have the Bengals scoring 21 points. So 2 touchdown passes from Burrow, 1 rushing from Mixon. But I have the Titans winning 33-21.
Bengals have the edge in the kicking game because you can't trust Randy Bullock to make any kind of field goal. He's usually hitting the goalpost a lot of the time. Cincinnati has the edge in wide receivers. But we talked about earlier, the coaching battle between Rabel against Taylor is too hard to ignore. Rabel's going to have his guys ready to go. Tennessee wins a close, low-scoring, ugly game. Burrow makes a couple mistakes because of this pass rush for Tennessee. I'll say 23-20 Titans.
I'm going to go Bengals on this one. I do think they're ready for this moment, especially the offense, and I think these weapons. So I think it'll be kind of a game where we kind of expect there to be more points, but I think these teams kind of struggle maybe on 4th down attempts or in the red zone. So maybe a little bit lower scoring than some expect, but I got Bengals 28, Titans 24.
Yeah, I have the same exact score, just the opposite. I want to feel like the Bengals are ready. I want to feel like, this is a year that they make that surprise run to the championship game. But I think Tennessee, the timing of getting Derrick Henry back, I think their ability to kind of withstand what they went through this entire season and still end up with the 1 seed. I know we're not giving them a lot of attention, and that I think is more of a us problem as opposed to them. I think they're a good team that just is going to play probably their best football in a long time today. So give me the Titans, but this is going to be a huge step up for those Bengals. So we've told you one half of the AFC Championship game. We'll tell you the second half tomorrow, obviously, because that's going to kick or that's going to end. Yeah. Okay, Kyle, we're getting to that. Because that's going to end, obviously, the divisional round weekend here in the NFL. But we do have one more game today. That's right. That is San Francisco, Green Bay, the battle, a rematch from earlier this season. Actually, we have 3 rematches from this season, starting with this one, and the 2 games on Sunday are both rematches from earlier this year. This is also a rematch from some previous playoff matchups, all of which have not gone the Packers' way. So let's just start this way. I'm going to just throw it out there. How does this go differently for the Packers than it has the previous 3 times these 2 teams have met in the playoffs? And I'll let you go. I'll take it away, Kyle, because you're the Packers.
Well, anyone who saw my recent article on Full Press Coverage, the Packers' defensive MVP, Devondre Campbell, I think he's completely transformed that defense. And, when it was who am I thinking? Blake Martinez, great player, Blake Martinez, but when it was Martinez and Summers against that 49ers rushing attack in 2019, you could tell that they were less athletically equipped than the 49ers offensive line. I think now with Devondre Campbell and Chris Barnes, kind of remodeling that inside linebacker position over the last 2 years, I think you've got something a lot more solid. If the defensive line can't get through, you've at least got linebackers that can tackle really well and prevent the big long runs constantly happening. So I think that would, to me, be the biggest difference. And I know, Ian, on the Full Press Packers pod, you'd love this argument, because I was debating with Jesse that Campbell was actually the Packers' overall MVP, not Aaron Rodgers, which would undoubtedly hurt his league MVP chances, right? And he would, which is maybe why I was kind of leaning to Brady to your point and to your side. But yeah, I think go Devondre Campbell.
The other way this turns out different, and we talked about this kind of with the coin toss, where I think, like, you look at last week, like, let's say New England takes the ball first and scores, it changes the tenure of the game. Same way, I think it was another game in that regard. Tampa. Philly took the ball first, and Philly ran the ball and established something that might have helped the game. You're the Packers, get the ball first, get the ball to Devontae Adams early and often. He had 12 catches in the first matchup. Get a 7 to 10 point lead, because you look at this Niners team right now, and good that Jimmy Garoppolo is playing. Jimmy Garoppolo almost lost them the game last week. And there was the NFC Championship game a few years ago where Jimmy didn't really do anything. And as much as I think he's a good player, you have him in freezing cold weather. Get Green Bay up 10-0, 13-0, and as great as Deebo Samuel is and George Kittle is, I don't think we fully know, and it's weird to say for a guy that is taking a team to a Super Bowl, can Jimmy Garoppolo lead a team down from 10 points down? Now, he nearly did it in week 3, but can he do it in Lambeau? Not so sure.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what both of you guys said. I think Zadarius Smith being back is a real factor in this game. Obviously didn't play much this season with the back injury. So I think, forcing Jimmy G to allowing this defense to kind of pin their ears back and I think kind of win. I think they can kind of match the physicality and the strength up front in the 49ers offensive line. So I think forcing Jimmy to beat you, I think kind of making him, get him into longer down and distances and kind of make him to throw the ball down the field rather than using the screen game all the time. I think that's kind of the way you got to go. And I think overall the run defense, I think Deebo Samuel's actually going to probably get the most carries of anybody. So I think it's just kind of making those plays out in space and just kind of working on the fundamentals more than anything. I don't think you have to worry as much in between the tackles with Deebo. So I'd say stopping Deebo more than anything and forcing Jimmy to beat you.
Now, Drayton, sorry, and I just quick question, because so you're saying you think Deebo leads the 49ers in carries. Do you think he leads this game in carries? Do you think he gets more carries than Dillon and Jones?
I'll say no. I think Jones will get more than him.
If anything, I'd say A.J. Dillon might get more than him, but I know I've kind of predicted that a few times this year. Okay, this is a Dillon game and it hasn't quite come true, but I kind of really think that's you don't want this defense to get tired, because that was also a problem against the 49ers once it was just like the long drive after long drive. So I think offensively, as much as I know, and Jesse would agree with you, Ricky, in that like just get Aaron Rodgers the ball right away, get into Adams, and then come out firing. But I kind of like the other approach. I want them to start with the ball, take an 8-minute drive, and then just pound it in with A.J. Dillon. And then it's just like you're shortening the game a lot, which puts more pressure on that 49ers offense. And I think because the 49ers are going to want to control the clock, I think it's important for the Packers to do so as well.
Well, and real quick, I think that actually accomplishes the same thing, because I think the idea of I think it's all about just having a fast start, because Kyle, you'll be the first to admit it that the Packers start slow, and I don't know if this is a game that they can necessarily start slow. What I do know is if they start quickly, it gives them a massive advantage and perhaps will make this game a lot easier for them for the most part. So I do think whether it's throwing or running, I mean, we've seen, and kind of to your point, Kyle, about, someone other than Aaron Rodgers being the Packers MVP. Like, I think I've said the Packers have been the most well-balanced team of all these teams. And I think you can point to a number of different players. Like I thought earlier in the season, for the most part, they were a very run-centric team. And whether that was short passing or just the running game, it all accomplishes the same thing. But that was what it was, where it's like, when we talk about, the big picture in the MVP race, I always argued that, well, the Buccaneers obviously relied on Brady's arm more than the Packers do Rodgers. Although Rodgers is great, it's sometimes they just have to play to their strength. So whether they're rushing the ball or throwing the ball, all I think that matters for the Packers is they score first and they score early. And I think that changes the big picture for this game, because you start to give the 49ers a little bit of confidence, and maybe they jump out to an early lead. Then you can see them start controlling the game with Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, who's starting to really come on and be a very dynamic player for this team. That starts to happen. Then all of a sudden, guess what? The 49ers pass rush, and you can see it up on the screen there. Nick Bosa, 21 tackles for a loss. That starts to ramp up. And then all of a sudden, that's when then these things start to compound and become issues for the Packers. Because, to be honest, I don't know how, and Kyle, again, correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously you pay attention to the Packers more. I don't know how good this team is at coming from behind. If they fall behind, I'm not that confident in the Packers being able to come back, because I just, over the years, unless it's against the Lions, I mean, honestly, we just haven't really seen it that much. So
we'll say we did see it in the 49ers game this regular season, right? I mean, you let the 49ers come back and get the lead in the last minute, and then a 45-second drive, basically almost what Dallas had against the 49ers. But
well, I would say what was the score gap late though? I mean, I'm talking more or less a relatively large deficit. So if the 49ers jump out to a 14-point lead, again, assuming Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't want to, give you the game back, like I said, I think that's going to be hard for this Packers team who, look, I mean, as great as Aaron Rodgers has been, he doesn't have, I guess, the come from behind resume that other great quarterbacks have. And that's, again, I'm not saying this as a knock. I'm just saying it as in a vacuum, what's going to happen if this 49ers team, this is a team that's equipped to play from ahead, right? The 49ers, you give them a lead, they can sit there, slow down the clock. Jimmy Garoppolo is no problem just dumping it off and letting, his playmakers make plays. And obviously the defense is talented. So, the Packers not only have to start fast, I think they have to not fall behind in this game. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe add a little bit.
That is fair. You're right, because I am struggling to think of the big signature come from behind wins, right? Like the big signature wins are always, they're just dominating from the get-go. Now, the one thing I will say about Matt LaFleur, and again, something we've talked about on the Full Press Packers pod this year, it seems like the Packers do start slower under him than they did with McCarthy. I remember back to the McCarthy eras, like some of those years where it's like, oh yeah, opening drive touchdown every game, but then the second half adjustments. Right? That's where LaFleur really gets it. I think he purposefully runs plays that aren't necessarily designed to win. They're designed to reveal things from the defense so he can use it later. I think that's maybe why they're starting slow. If you're giving me one extreme or the other, I certainly prefer what Matt LaFleur is doing, with the great halftime adjustments and understanding you're using your play calls to figure things out as opposed to just trying to succeed. You're obviously trying to succeed on every play. The players certainly are playing to succeed, but it does seem like his play calling early is, I want to know what they do in this situation. I don't want what the defense does in this situation. Reveal things for later. So it's finding the balance, right? Like plays that can expose the defense, but they can also win with and succeed and get first downs with. So that's, I think, where the balance is. You are right, Ian. I think, this might come down to who scores first wins the game, right? Both these teams do play better with the lead. And again, I think maybe basically every team in the playoffs probably does, other than the Bengals. So it's not like that much of a flag planting statement. Most teams play better when they're in the lead, and that's kind of like irregardless of sport, really. So
no, I would agree with that. But for example, if let's say the Rams jump out to a 14-point lead tomorrow, and even say it's a 14-point lead middle of the third quarter, I'm still sitting there thinking the Bucs are going to win because we've seen them. First of all, we've seen that team do it. I mean, we saw I know, albeit against the Jets, they've still done it. But of course, obviously, Brady's resume speaks for itself. So that's the difference there. So it's of course, every team's going to play better when they have a lead. But I think some teams are more capable of playing from behind if necessary. Ideally, they don't want to play from behind. But if it comes down to it, I think it would be difficult for Green Bay. Green Bay should and is capable of going out there and scoring on the first drive, and certainly is capable of going out there and controlling this game. So I think if they do that, it's going to create quite a good situation for them moving forward. So what do you think, Ricky?
Yeah, I think to me it just comes down to when you look at both these teams. Like I said earlier, if you're Green Bay, you got to play out in front. I think Rodgers can come back in this game if they have to, because ultimately I think, look at this Niners team, they can get hot in spurts, they can get cold in spurts, and Green Bay can do the same thing. But if the Packers can get out in front, like we've seen late in the season, they'll get off to a good first half, and then the second half, all it takes is really one Devontae Adams quarter to really get this offense going. We talk about that with Chase. It's kind of the same way with Adams. Then Lazard can get open, and Scantling can get open. San Francisco did a good job on Dallas's receivers last week, mainly because they got a pass rush. So like you said, if Bosa can get a pass rush, and we'll see how he is from the concussion, or Warner can get a pass rush off his injury last week. I don't know if San Francisco is completely healthy up front. And I don't think the Packers are going to commit 14 penalties to give the game away. They had 7 in week 3, which is a decent amount. But I don't think they're going to make so many fundamental mistakes unless this team is just rusty out of the bye, or Rodgers is feeling some pressure to try to win this game for his legacy or something like that. But I don't really see that here.
I think there's a couple things that are kind of different for these two teams, maybe slightly than what we've seen before too. I think Shanahan's maybe not holding back quite as much as he usually does, as far as kind of letting his best players have the ball a lot more. I think sometimes in the past he's focused a little too much on spreading the wealth and running it through, I think, just one or two guys. But I think you're seeing a lot more guys get more chances. So I think that's slightly different for him in this playoffs. And I think just Packers side of things, Rodgers having some weapons he hasn't really had in the last few years. Randall Cobb being back today. Really excited to see how he does. But I think you look at the improvement A.J. Dillon's made as well. I think both these teams are a lot more versatile, a lot more multiple than they've been last couple playoff runs. So I think in terms of maybe being able to come back, I think Green Bay's better equipped this year maybe to do so. But I don't know if I don't know if I have their trust with maybe the offensive line against the Niners D-line. That's the only, I think, pause that I would have with Green Bay's comeback chance.
Yeah, Bakhtiari is listed as questionable today. Didn't practice Thursday or Tuesday, but practiced Wednesday, right? So it seemed like they wanted to hold him out Tuesday, tested things Wednesday, and okay, let's not force it. I get the impression he's going to play, but yeah, if he's not 100%, I mean, it seems like he hasn't been just the recovery from the ACL, but if he's really severely impacted by that, then it might be a problem. So I agree, because I believe in that game, though, Josh Nijman did play. I think that was a game where Elton Jenkins got hurt, not his season-ending injury, the earlier game against the 49ers. So they were still able to win without that elite left tackle, but you'd certainly love their chances if Bach was in there. And I also think, sorry, Ian, Valdez-Scantling listed as doubtful. So looks like they may not have that field stretching deep threat. So that's just maybe one thing to watch out for.
Well, and real quick, Braden kind of mentioned it, kind of in just passing, but is there pressure right now? I know, look, we've talked about this. I've talked about this. I know you have, Kyle, and I'm sure we talked about it on this Sunday program. There's no player certainly left in this playoffs, and certainly coming into the playoffs, that has more to gain for their legacy, quote unquote, than Aaron Rodgers. And at the same time, I don't think there's any more pressure on any other player than Aaron Rodgers right now. Does that have an impact? I mean, let's face it. I know, he's been kind of in the news. If anyone read that long form, that long form article yesterday about some of his thoughts, I mean, it's much better, in my opinion, to just compartmentalize and separate football from real life. So it's, you know what I mean? So you're not distracted by that. But the reality of it is that's something that's on his mind. The pressure, I know he knows is there. I mean, he knows it's there. He knows what it is. And let's face it, in some high pressure situations, he has not performed up to par. So does all of this weighing on him? I know this whole regular season was kind of loosey-goosey, very running around doing his little
always
thing,
smiling at every other coach,
smiling, winking, doing this, oh yeah, I'm cool type thing. But that's the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
He's fine in the regular season. Is there something to say about the pressure he's facing today, and could that impact him? Because, well, think about how pressed Kyle, and again, you probably know him best. Do you think it think about how much it mattered to him that he would not throw an interception? Think about that. He's thinking about, when you play Madden sometimes, we're guilty of it. You're sitting there saying oh, I just want to have this great season. I don't want, I don't want to throw these interceptions. And then you start to press. And then guess what? One of these days, eventually you just don't have that focus, that laser focus that you necessarily have. So is there some worry that maybe all of this pressure has built up, and now it comes down to you have to win right now? There's no more, hand signals. There's no more, little appearances on Pat McAfee's podcast where he gets up there or he says that he's being silenced, even though I've never seen any athlete on the national press tour as much as he has over the last 6 months. So does this all come to a head, Kyle and Ricky?
It is difficult to say I'm being silenced when you're on a very successful podcast show and broadcasting to the whole world. Gotta love that though. But I mean, pressure, it's a funny thing, right? Some athletes thrive under it. Look at Tom Brady. Every time he faces pressure, he seems to come out of it even better, right? So, and I think you're talking about legacy, right? If Rodgers really wants to view himself as a top 5 quarterback, you have to elevate in those pressure situations. So I mean, I guess it
Well,
depends.
real-
I think
go back
it can affect him in
I-
either direction.
I don't want to interrupt. Well, I kind of did interrupt you. I didn't mean to, but go back to what he said earlier before the season. People don't come to Green Bay for Green Bay; they come to win championships. Well, you didn't have to say that, because I think, like myself, and I'm sure Patriots fans for sure sat there and kind of giggled a little bit because it's like, wait a minute, what championships are you winning? So I think that internal pressure has been building since prior to this season. And quite frankly, I think that's going to play a factor. And it could only mean that he gets off to a slow start, or maybe there's a few series where he's not quite as sharp as he has been. But that may be all it takes. I mean, that's what we saw in some of the previous losses that the Packers have had in the playoffs. So, Ricky, what do you think?
I always say this about Aaron Rodgers. It's never a bad thing to be Peyton Manning. And I think he's Peyton Manning of this decade. And what I mean by that is, all right, great numbers. And his postseason numbers aren't even awful. Like, I think people look at it. I think they were talking about he's 11-9 in the playoffs, 20 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, something like that. Not terrible, but there is pressure to him. They had all the hype of all the drama from this offseason. And then you have potentially, let's say, an outcome happens tomorrow where the Rams beat Tampa. You're Matthew Stafford away from going back to the Super Bowl and you lose that game at home. I mean, that doesn't look good for him either. And then maybe there's a chance where he does maybe throw an errant pass to try to force something in. I think he's fine. I think he can handle that, because I also think but in his head, he realizes if I don't bring a title home to Green Bay and I leave this offseason, then it's kind of hurting Green Bay, because people are like, yeah, you were great, but you only really won one and you caused all that offseason drama only to lose in the playoffs again. So there's maybe that internal Lambeau legacy more so now than the national legacy, because you can always win one somewhere else and it's fine. It's the Lambeau legacy. I think that's the bigger deal if he doesn't get out of the NFC this time.
Yeah, and I think kind of where I was going was what Ian said with the championship. Guys kind of started their careers back in the 2000 decades. Drew Brees only had one, after all those great years in the 2010s, never got back to winning the Super Bowl. So, I think in terms of just all these guys that have, won one early and then gone so long without one, I think that pressure's there for him to kind of get it done one more time, maybe before leaving Green Bay if he does. I think you also just look at the Packers as a whole. I mean, how many times have they had the one seed, or they've been, entering the playoff record? They haven't come through in this past, 10 years. So I don't know. I think it's not just a Rodgers thing. I think it is kind of a whole entire team thing. Having this one seed, kind of feeling like you kind of entering the playoffs. I think maybe the most dominant team. I think they were a step ahead of any other teams right now entering the postseason. But I think you look at this opponent, they've kind of found their best stretch of the season right now. So I don't think it's just a Rodgers thing. I think it's a Green Bay thing altogether.
Because none of those, sorry, Ian, but I think Mason Crosby is the only other player that was on that Super Bowl winning team. So the entire roster, it's a bunch of guys that haven't won that Super Bowl yet. So, they're all feeling immense pressure. But quite frankly, I think Jimmy G's under just as much pressure as Aaron Rodgers, because he's not only playing. My impression is he has to win a Super Bowl if he wants to stay in San Francisco. Anything short of them winning the Super Bowl, he's gone. But also, how well does he play? Like how much are teams willing to invest in him? Like, are teams just kind of, if he loses this game, okay, yeah, you did win that one playoff game, but ultimately we're just gonna give you a 1-year prove it deal as opposed to like the long term commitment. So I think Garoppolo's under a lot of pressure, not just to win with the 49ers, but for frankly the outlook of the rest of his career.
No, I mean, I agree that he's under a lot of pressure. I don't think he's nearly under the same amount of pressure as Aaron Rodgers, because his legacy isn't as vital or crucial or as historical as Aaron Rodgers could be. I mean, we're talking about a guy who, if he goes through his entire career winning and going to just one Super Bowl, you could kind of put him anywhere from John Elway to Dan Marino to, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of, he'd be in a group of a lot of really great quarterbacks. If he
as opposed to like firmly like very clear top 5, right? He's top 10.
Yeah, I would
in that mix. Yeah,
so.
I agree. I do agree with you. If he only ever ends up winning one, it's tough to put him up there.
He would have to do quite a bit to elevate over that next level. Even the Peyton Mannings, the Joe Montanas, and I mean, again, I'm not even going to bring Tom Brady up because That
Oh, I thought you were going to say Otto Graham. That's the guy you didn't want to bring
yeah,
up.
that's
But
right,
yeah,
right.
you're right. Tom Brady. I forgot about him for some reason.
Well, look, I mean, a few years ago it was kind of a joke, but now him and Otto Graham have essentially the same number of champions, which is absurd. But again, we'll talk about Tom tomorrow, and I certainly will do that. But no, for Aaron Rodgers, again, it's all about winning. He has to win. Anything short of winning a Super Bowl is going to be a negative for him, especially again, and it's not necessarily him comparing him to it. It's the public, it's the media, it's contemporaries. I mean, I know Leroy Butler was out there the other day talking to the Hall of Fame, talking about, oh, if he beats Tom Brady and goes and wins a Super Bowl, he's the GOAT. No, he's not. I don't care if he does beat Tom Brady and goes and wins another Super Bowl. That does nothing to close the gap between him and Tom. But what it does do is elevate Aaron individually and puts him in a very, very, very small group of quarterbacks. So, all right. So we have some.
And let's face it, Jimmy, he's out of San Francisco anyway.
Yeah.
I think if he has a good game tonight, it makes him a couple more dollars. But he's still going to get paid because some team is going to miss out on Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, or nobody's going to want to draft a quarterback in the first round. And somebody's going to pay him a bunch of money because there is at least a good floor with him. It's just a matter of tonight, does he not screw it up? If he can play a decent game, because something to keep in mind, 9 of his 12 interceptions have come in losses. So they need him to have a complete game, but 5 picks in his last 3 games. We'll see what happens. But I think he's gone into Trey Lance next year, even if Jimmy G wins a Super Bowl.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not going to change. So again, like whether if he does win and maybe it delays it for a year, but the reality of it is they're heading towards their future. All right. Time to do our pickup props here for this game. We're going to start right off the bat. We got Deebo Samuel versus Davante Adams. I think one of these questions started to get asked a little bit. I just let it go because I was like, we kind of got the similar one coming up here on the props. But this is the official, in the books, on the record question: who has more total yards in this game? Total, not just receiving yards. So is it Deebo or is it Davante?
I'm going to take Deebo with the total yards. Like I still think he might be the most dangerous weapon of theirs rushing, and between him and Kittle as the most dangerous weapon receiving. And I just think this is going to be a game where, like, if the 49ers want to win, Deebo Samuel's going to have to probably have a monster game. I don't see them winning without that happening. So I think it'll be a close enough game. So I will say Deebo.
I'm going to go with Davante Adams. I can't get over the 12 catches that he had in the first matchup. There's always that instance, at least down the stretch, where Adams will have like 70 catches and a half, and it completely skewers the game. So I think he could have more impact in one half, and he's not going to share anything. Deebo Samuel could share something with Elijah Mitchell, and it takes away from it. You can even see Kyle Juszczyk at some point. So I'll take Davante Adams here.
I'll go with Deebo. I think Green Bay kind of comes out a little more balanced, like Kyle said. Starting slow, I think they're going to try to let their defense, get a little more energy to start the game. So I just think this is a game, if you're 49ers, I think you have to feed Deebo as much as possible. So kind of just going off of that, I got to go with Samuel.
All right. So next we have over/under total points in this game. Now, it's going to be cold. I happen to think it's going to be more of a low scoring relatively low scoring game. But is it going to break that over/under 47.5? So what do you think, Kyle?
Well, I don't want to share my full prediction yet, but I have it under. Pretty close, but yeah, I'll take the under.
Yeah, last call by the game last week, the winning team hit the over by themselves. So I don't think that'll happen again this time. I will take the under. I don't see a lot of points getting scored largely because you could see turnovers forced by both these defenses.
Yeah, I got under as well. I do think it'll be close, but ultimately it's just I think two teams that are willing to grind it out all 4 quarters. So got to go the under.
All right. One of these times I'm going to actually scroll the mouse in the right direction. We're going to actually get the next one properly instead of going back every single time. But the next one, 49ers Packers, first touchdown score, very similar to the question we asked last time. First touchdown score in this game. Is it Deebo? Is it Elijah? Is it Davante? Is it Aaron Jones? Or, as Ricky loves to pick, other? Is it other?
Well, I'm actually going to get cute and creative and say the other. And if I can go with what Ricky did last game, I'll take 2. I'll say A.J. Dillon from the Packers. And from the 49ers, I'll take George Kittle.
I'm not going to go as creative this time. I know the others usually my thing. Like I've been talking about all this segment. If the Packers going to win, Devontae needs a big game. I think you'll see Devontae Adams catch the first touchdown.
I'm going to go with Aaron Jones on this one. I think this could be one that's pretty close to the goal line, maybe after a long drive to open the game. So go with Aaron Jones.
All right. Aha, see, I did it. I finally did it. Oh, and then, of course, I hit the mouse again and it goes back. But Aaron Rodgers over under 274.5 passing yards. I believe he was under this mark in the first meeting, and generally he averages about 260, I believe, for the season. Does he go over 274.5 against the 49ers?
Yeah, I'll take the under. I think it again, like taking the under on this point. I think it's close, but ultimately my game script of AJ Dillon getting a lot of usage and a lot more rush yards than maybe expected. So I'll say under.
I think there's something to prove with Aaron Rodgers here. I think he tries to take a couple deep throws down the field. It's maybe slightly over. I think it could be like 280. But I think he's going to have enough big plays in this one to just slightly beat that number.
I'm going to go over as well. I think this is a game where Rodgers kind of does have to hit on the deep passes a little more, or at least have his weapons get a lot of yards after the catch. This is a pretty good 49er defense against the short passing game. So I think he'll hit on some of those deep shots, and I think he'll go just over.
All right. Next, 2.5 touchdown passes for Mr. Rodgers here against the 49ers. Over under.
Yeah, it's the same thing it's the same line as Burrow, 2.5. I'll say under. I think he'll get 2, but not 3.
I'm going to go over. I just dug this stat up. The last time Aaron Rodgers threw fewer than 2 touchdowns in a postseason game was the dreaded Brandon Bostic onside kick debacle in 2014. So I think the odds are safe on Aaron Rodgers' side. I'll go over 2.
Really? Even that's right. They did get the late touchdown from Sternberger. That's right. Huh. Yeah, good point. Good find, Ricky.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same line as Kyle here. I think it'll be 2, but not 3. This is kind of a game I do think Aaron Jones or even AJ Dillon, but I think especially Jones will get a lot of chances. So I'm going to go under on this one.
The 49ers are right outside the top 10 when it comes to allowing touchdown passes, and I think they average about 1.5 a game. So, and Aaron Rodgers is right, kind of that's essentially what his average, for the most part, except for this last stretch of games, for a majority of the season, he was averaging about 1.92 touchdowns a game. Obviously, the last few weeks, I think it was higher than that, closer to 3. But so he's right there. That's right about what his average is. But I'm probably going to end up taking the under as well. So, all right, folks, that's it. That's it for our pickup props, which means we finally get to make our picks. Now, I'll go last, just like I did before. I like to build up that suspense. So I'll start with Kyle. Kyle, give us a score, give us a prediction, and is Aaron Rodgers playing in another NFC Championship game?
Yeah, my prediction is both the teams playing today will host their respective championship games 8 days from now. The Titans win and the Packers win. I have it a 2-point margin, just like the regular season game, 24-22. I think it will be a close one. It might take that last-minute drive. Hopefully Mason Crosby's ready to play today. He usually is in the playoffs, to be fair. I know this regular season was a bit of a roller coaster, but I think it's 95% made field goal percentage in the playoffs. So usually he comes alive for the playoffs and he's pretty clutch. So he might need that last second field goal.
I'm going to go 30-17 Packers, so slightly under the number we talked about. I just think Aaron Rodgers is going to make enough plays in this game, and largely I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to make that one mistake or two that gives Green Bay a short field to make those plays. It's not the Niners offense can't get it done, but you also have a guy that hasn't really played a lot of games in cold weather that I don't think we saw some of the struggles you can have in that. And then facing a Packers defense, it's only getting healthier. I think that could create some issues. Green Bay, I think, gets the ball early, gets about a 10-0 lead, kind of like they did the first time. This time they don't give it back. So Green Bay wins by a couple of scores.
Yeah, earlier in the week I kind of was leaning a bigger Packer win, but I think this will be closer than I kind of first thought. I think this will be a game that's kind of muddied up. I don't think there's a whole lot of flash other than maybe a couple deep passes by Rodgers. So going to be a tough game. I think it'll be tight the whole way. But I got Packers 24, 49ers 21.
Hey, okay, I guess I'm going to be the only one on this panel to not pick with my head and pick with my something. I don't know. I'm certainly not using my head.
49% of your heart.
Yes. Thank you. 49% of my heart. I like that. No, look, everything I've kind of said, the pressure, I think Deebo Samuel's going to have a big game. I don't think Jimmy's going to have a great game, but I think he's going to do enough not to screw it up. Let's put it that way. And look, I just think this Packers team has, I don't know, they have some fatal flaws that I think are going to get exposed, mostly the slow starting and kind of just the, to Kyle's point, what he said earlier, there are times where this team just kind of disappears for a half. And I think you're going to get this. And unfortunately for them, I think the 49ers are going to take advantage of it and they're going to be able to control the clock. So I got the 49ers 31, Packers 21. So maybe it's a little wishful thinking. Maybe it's not. But hey, if the Packers lose and the Bucs win, then Tom Brady's hosting an NFC Championship game at home. And I'm pretty okay with that as a Brady fan. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. We're going to be right back here talking about, obviously, the conclusion of these two games and, of course, previewing tomorrow night's doubleheader, which is going to be pretty awesome, in my opinion. So thank you very much. Give us a follow on Twitter at FullPressNFL. And if you're just tuning into the tail end of this, search the FPC NFL podcast wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the whole audio once, twice, maybe 3 times. We'd appreciate it. Have a great day, and we'll talk.